For a long time, I didn't consider myself a gamer. You might be thinking to yourself, boy, that's a weird thing to say, Kothorix, considering the amount of games you play and videos you make about them. Let me explain. It actually starts with something that isn't a video game, or at least wasn't at the time, Magic the Gathering. When I was in high school, I played Magic with a group of friends. Now, we weren't very good at the game and didn't know much about it. Our decks were all pretty much the same. We would load up about half of it with the biggest, most powerful creatures we could get our hands on, and the other half was pretty much just land cards so we could get out our massive creatures. I remember a friend pulling Darksteel Colossus from a booster pack and everyone being so jealous. 11/11 indestructible with trample. It was so imposing. If our friend managed to actually get it out, it was pretty much game over, and since we were all pretty bad at the game, it often got to that point. Looking back now, Darksteel Colossus isn't really a very good card. There are a number of ways to remove it from play, even though it's indestructible, and unless you have some trick to play it without paying its mana cost, it'll never see the light of day anyway. But we were young and naive in the ways of Magic. As the years went on, I got a little bit better at the game. I had more cards, I played with better players, and I even started going to a local card shop and playing. My decks were no longer just a random handful of the biggest cards I could get, because I was thinking about new things like speed and synergy and combos. Then I started playing at tournaments. Big tournaments. My mind was open to this new idea of meta. That is, knowing what cards other people are playing ahead of time in order to build decks that specifically counter theirs, or just copy them. So on top of needing to understand how to play the game and how to make a good deck myself, I had to learn how other people made decks and memorize how other people played. And then on top of that, I started going to pre-release tournaments, and in order to be successful at those, you couldn't just show up and build your deck and play. No, you needed to be looking at which cards were coming out months ahead of time and read articles about possible decks and combos might be building, and try and think of some yourself to surprise people with at the tournaments. We're talking about spending almost all your free time just looking at and memorizing cards. And I'll never forget the tournament that made me quit playing Magic. I was doing pretty well, probably better than I've ever done, and at that point in the tournament you start getting matched up against better and better players. But there's something odd about a lot of the good players. It seemed that either they were trying to cheat, or tried to get their opponents disqualified by accusing them of cheating. The whole cheating aspect was never something I had really thought about before. None of my friends cheated, and we didn't accuse each other of cheating. But these players were just dead set on doing anything to win besides actually playing the game. I got the judge called on me I don't know how many times for the most mundane of reasons. My land cards were slightly askew, my deck was turned at a slight angle, there was a barely perceivable scratch on the back of one of my cards. And it was at this point that Magic was no longer about playing a game for me. It was about spending hours doing research into the meta. It was about knowing what new cards were coming out. It was about studying how to catch people cheating and what to do to avoid people accusing you of cheating, despite not actually cheating. It just wasn't a game anymore, and so I quit. Now, the same thing can be applied to almost any game, competitive or otherwise. If you want to get better at the game, you need to do some studying. One that comes to mind is League of Legends. You can jump in and play all the games you want, but you won't progress past a certain point unless you start memorizing every ability cooldown for every move for every champion and learn every lane matchup and every possible build and what the meta builds are and meta champions and all these things that aren't actually just playing the game. And that's why I didn't consider myself a gamer. Because gamers do that. Gamers get good at video games because they care about the games. But I'm not good at games, and I usually don't get better, because as soon as all this homework and things other than actually playing the game pop up that I need to do to improve, I kind of lose interest. And part of the reason that I easily give up on games when they become too difficult or I just don't try them in the first place is because I know all of this work that comes with it. I just want to play the game. People lately have been asking, what is a gamer? Is it anyone who plays games? Do you have to play games a certain amount of time a week or have a certain level of skill to be considered a gamer? Or is anyone who picks up a cell phone and plays 5 minutes of Clicker Quest a gamer? Well, to me, what makes someone a gamer is people who dedicate their time to reading about various aspects of the games, making spreadsheets and posting and reading on forums about the games. Someone who probably spends more time reading about games than actually playing them. That is a gamer. And for a long time, it's something that I just didn't really like to do. I was pretty content to hop on World of Warcraft and do my suboptimal DPS. I didn't really care about reading about which rotations would maximize my damage or which consumables are most optimal for every situation. But that changed one day, and I think the game that really did that was Pokemon. Pokemon is a game that anyone can pick up and play. Going through the story mode is pretty easy, but it's not until you start getting into a competitive environment that you really start to understand how complex these games really are. You learn that Pokemon basically have genetics that make them better or worse, and training them in certain ways can raise their stats outside of just leveling up, and that certain moves can be bred onto them, and that some Pokemon are just better than others, and there's a meta revolving around that. And I wanted to be good at Pokemon, so I did the research and I read and I planned and I played against other people. And to be honest, I never really did get very good at it. But what it did teach me is that there's a lot more to getting good at video games than just playing the games. And I think that having that understanding and wanting to improve your gameplay is really what makes someone a gamer. So if nothing else, I hope you come away from this video with an understanding of my mindset and what I mean when I talk about gamers and gaming. Anyway, I'm Kothorix, and you have a wonderful day.